Cool. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Simona. I work as an Android developer relations engineer at Google. I work on Jetpack Compose and Android Studio UI tools.
And I'm Jose Alcérreca, also Android developer relations engineer, working on developer productivity.
So thanks for coming to our talk today, where we'll share with you many new and improved features of the Android Studio agent, how these features can assist you in your daily workflows, and how best to use them to get the most out of them. Now, our goal is pretty straightforward. We want Android Studio to have the best AI agent, the most knowledgeable one, and the one that's truly helpful for Android development. That's why we're focusing on creating features and tools that you can use and trust enough to delegate those more repetitive tasks to, so you can focus on the more exciting bits of Android development. That being said, today we're going to show a lot of live demos that depend on AI models and features that are experimental. So, live demo, AI model, experimental features, it means that pretty much anything can happen. So we might need to tweak it here and there and help it out and improvise a bit. So we appreciate your patience while we do so. But before we dive into the live demos, first we need to go over some theory concepts, things like tools, MCPs, context, and similar. And then we'll understand enough to actually go into the live demo. Over to you.
All right, let's get started. And if we can move to the laptop. Thank you. All right, so what I have here today is Android Studio Canary. It's almost the same as the one you can download today. It has an extra feature that I'll tell you about. And we're going to be focusing on the agent. And this window here is the main UI for the agent. You can open and close it with this icon. All right, so the agent is not only a chatbot, it can only perform tasks, complex and simple. So I can ask, what's today's agenda? In order to do this, it needs a large language model that you can choose here if you have an API key. If not, you can just use the default model at no cost. All right, so in order to understand the basics of agents, we first need to talk about a couple of concepts like tools and context. So something that we're going to be mentioning all the time in this talk are tools, agent tools. Tools are what make an agent different and what make Android Studio's agent special. So if I run this command /tools, we can see the list of tools that are available in this agent. So you can see tools like write file, version lookup, read file, etc. So what is this? One of the first things that the agent does when you start a new task is it sends this list, or one very similar, to the model. It's basically saying, hey, if you need anything from me, just let me know. I will run it for you and return the response. It's the model who decides which tools to use with which parameters and what to do with the response. That's very important. So with this, I can start asking questions like, what's the theme defined in this project? It's important to note that the agent doesn't send your whole code base to the model. That would be incredibly wasteful. Instead, it sends this list of tools and the prompt, and then the model needs to decide how to solve this problem. In this case, it did something very smart. So it used, decided to call the find files tool with theme_kt as a parameter, and that's how it found the theme. This is because the model knows that most Android apps define their themes in a file that ends in theme.kt. So this is pretty smart. But every agent can do that. So what about what's the latest version of Lottie? This is where things get interesting, because we are mixing the power of a large language model with the power of Android Studio. Android Studio already has a feature, a functionality to do version lookups. So we're exposing that tool as one of the agent tools to the model. So the part that is missing is what's the actual artifact of Lottie. I just said Lottie, but Gemini, in this case 2.5 Flash, already knows what artifact I'm referring to, com rb android lottie. And this is how we got to the right response. Okay, so let's move on to something a little bit more real world, although not fully. Let's say that you are in the middle of a task, or rather the agent is in the middle of a task. So let me open this file. And let's say that it's done coding this repository here. And it wants to run the unit tests for it. How do you get to the task that you need to run? A generic agent would probably run all the unit tests in the project, which is really wasteful. I mean, potentially that's thousands of tests. So let's see how the agent would deal with this, or the model in this case. What Gradle task should I use to execute the tests that cover this class? Or something a lot less verbose, for sure. Again, we're not reading any files. This is just leveraging all the internal tools that are exposed by Android Studio. Tools like get Gradle artifact from file, get unit test for artifact, and finally get test task for artifact. I don't actually know what they do, but what I do is that it gets the right results. It's actually, this file is in the data module, and it's only available in the demo debug variant. You don't have to worry about these tools. You don't have to memorize them. But from time to time, it's useful to type /tools to see what's available and what makes Android Studio's agent a little bit different. Okay, so we all expect the agent in Android Studio to be really knowledgeable about Android. The problem is that large language models are trained with existing data at some point in time. So new libraries, new best practices are not part of the training, so the model doesn't know about them. Also, they are language models, not encyclopedias. But it turns out that if you complement a model with some knowledge or a way to find that knowledge, then the accuracy improves a lot. So we created something that we call the Android Knowledge Base. It's a collection of documentation articles from the Android docs, Firebase, Google developers, and also Kotlin Lang. And it's exposed as a tool. It's actually exposed as two tools. So we have search Android docs, and then there's another one called fetch Android docs to fetch individual articles. So I can ask something like, tell me about navigation 3. And something very interesting happens. The model knows that it doesn't know about navigation 3. So the first decision that it makes is, I need documentation. I need to look for a little bit of information about this. So it decided to use the query navigation 3. And the results include short descriptions. That's how it's able to infer this very good response of what navigation 3 is. If you ask something like, migrate my app to navigation 3 or whatever, it would probably fetch individual guides from the knowledge base. This has big implications because now you can use the agent with new APIs like Android XR, the new Gemini APIs, the latest version of Compose, etc. A tip that I want to share with you here is sometimes the model doesn't know that you're referring to new APIs. For example, you're asking it to do some Compose code, but it doesn't know that there's new APIs. Just add to the prompt something like check the docs. That's enough to trigger this tool call, and it gets much better accuracy. We're still tweaking the tool descriptions and the system prompt to see how much to call this tool, actually. All right, so that's some integrated tools that we have. But aside from these, there's a way to expand the list of tools. You've probably heard about MCP servers or MCP. This is the way to do it. For example, GitHub has a very interesting MCP server that lets you manage your repositories, issues, and pull requests just from the agent. So you can say things like, grab my latest issue and fix it, or whatever, right? But today I want to show something else. The Figma MCP server is also very interesting. So I have the Figma desktop app for Mac here running. And in here, I have a layout. It's just a list of items with a way to add new items to it. So if I go to settings in Android Studio and I enable MCP servers, you can see here that I have Figma already configured. And it's pointing to a local URL. This is because the MCP server is actually running inside of the desktop app. And this is a very common pattern, by the way. Normally, or well, frequently, MCP servers run locally on maybe in a Docker container or a binary, but there's also a way to configure remote MCP servers. The only reason I'm not using that is because I would leak my API key to all of you, and I don't want that. So if I open this screen, I have something similar to what we saw in Figma, right? This is a list of items and a way to add new ones. So now that I have the MCP server configured, we go to the bottom, we see that there's a new Figma MCP server collection of tools, and it has things like get design context, variable definitions, and get screenshot. So let's try to use that. Take a screenshot, let's do it well, of what I have selected on Figma, which is the default. I don't think this is necessary. And convert this screen to look like it. So I'm not going to show this demo fully because it would take 3 to 5 minutes and we have a lot of things to show. What I want to show you is that the get screenshot tool is now available after I configured the MCP server, and it's able to take a screenshot from Figma directly without having to deal with exporting to PNG and then adding it to the agent as an attachment. So I'm going to stop this. Simona has a lot better demos, UI demos to show you later. All right, so another important concept I want to talk about is context. As I said before, whenever you start a task, the list of tools is sent to the model, and this is part of what we call the context. But it's not just this list of tools. It also contains interesting information that is generated by Android Studio. If you think about it, every time you open a project in Android Studio, there is a lot of interesting information being generated. So we can definitely leverage that, either through tools or exposing it in context. So the simplest demo I can do to show this is, what is the name of this project? Just to show you that it doesn't read any files because it's part of the context. The response comes back immediately. All right, so what I actually want to talk about related to context is this menu here. It has 4 items. The first one is current file. You normally have that checked. The second one includes the contents of the recent files in the context. And then we have 2 that let you customize the context with the natural language that you decide. So it's agents.md and rules. So let's start with rules. If I go to the prompt library here, you can scope rules to the IDE or to the project. So this is a great way to customize the context for you. In this case, this is where I put the agenda in the beginning. It wasn't anything sophisticated. It's just the context that is added to every new task that I start. This is a good place to add something like your GitHub username if you're using the MCP server. Or if you feel adventurous, you can say something like, talk to me like a pirate, or something like that. Cool. Now, what happens if you want to share that customized context with the rest of your team? Well, for that, what we recommend is this new standard called agents.md. So I'm going to open the example that I created. Let me stop wrap that. In this, so agents.md is just a markdown document that lives normally in the root of your project. And in here, you can add some hints to the model so that it doesn't have to figure things out. For example, I have the title of the project. I have a short description. This is very useful because it's useful for the model to know what the end goal of your app is, right? And then some architectural hints, like the fact that it's using UDF or Hill for dependency injection, etc. So I have 2 tips for you regarding agents.md. First is start small. Don't add too much stuff to agents.md. This is sent to every single task that you add. Just add things when you see that the model is struggling to find things about your project. And the second tip is you can add agents.md files anywhere in your project, in any directory. So the way it works is it takes the current file and it browses all the way to the root of the project, looking for agents.md. So for example, you can have an agents file in the data directory, and then if you're editing a file in the data module, then it will be added, as well as the root agents.md file, of course. Okay, so with that, we move to demos. And the first one is half a demo, because I don't have time to show it completely. And this is something that we're working on. This is not available yet, not even in Canary. And it's a way to create new apps from scratch using natural language. So I can come here and say something like, create a calculator app. Optionally, I could attach images, would be mocks of the UI or whatever. Then I will give it a name, and off it goes. So this is great for prototyping, for trying out new libraries, for reproducing bugs, things like that. And the way it works, let me rearrange all of this. The way it works is first it creates a plan. It has some features, the tools and the libraries that it's going to use. It also generates the tasks that it's going to run. And in here, this is your opportunity to say to add more tasks or more features to it. So you can add things like, include UI tests or whatever. So for the sake of the demo, I'm just going to say looks good, and off it goes again. And now it's going to start doing all those things. Oh, it's asking me something. Okay. Sure. So this takes around 15 minutes. Obviously, we don't have time for that, so I'm going to stop it. It works most of the time, actually. No, it's hard to believe, but this planner thing makes things a lot more reliable. So you have to trust me when I say that this other project was generated with exactly the same prompt like 3 weeks ago or something like this. It's not perfect. Something happened with the 0, got stung or something. But I'm pretty happy with it. I kind of like it now. So let's take a quick look. The the Compose code looks good. It's using material theme. It's using content description, what it should. It's sending events to the view model. That looks pretty okay to me. The view model is where the calculation happens, clearly. So, it's pretty comprehensive. And it even handles edge cases or interesting situations, like preventing adding multiple decimal points to the single number. It also generated a bunch of unit tests, actually a lot of unit tests. So, I feel pretty okay with this. So let's see if it works. I mean, I know it works because I generated this 3 weeks ago, but it does, more or less. It converted to float for some reason, but it also even can handle errors. So that's pretty good. But I hear you say, well, this is great, but what I want to do is to modify my existing UIs and my existing app. So that's what Simona is here to talk about.
Okay, let me first start by cleaning up. Okay. What else? Let's kill this one. Okay, cool. So, the features that we've seen so far are either the ones that support you in testing or setting up your code base or updating it. These are the features that we've seen so far, but the features that we also have out already. But we also want to make sure that the agent is a good and trustworthy, helpful companion during UI development, that it's well positioned and well placed from our side to actually solve the problems that make you more efficient. That's why we teamed up Jetpack Compose and its tools, the agent, and the unique understanding that Android Studio has of your code base to support you better in those scenarios where you have to generate completely new features or designs, when you're refactoring or updating existing ones, or when you're just changing an annoying padding. And that way, we decided on the following set of features. Now, we're gonna demo all of them, if I manage to do it in time. The first one is Transform UI. This, by the way, all of these features are available in Canary, so you can try them out. This feature, Transform UI, lets you use natural text prompts to actually describe the changes that you want and then let the model handle them for you. The next one is Match UI to Target Image, which uses an uploaded image or a new design that you have to better align your existing UI with the dedicated, the new design. Next up is Fix UI Check Issues. This is a new feature that leverages the existing UI check mode to detect potential UI issues and to offer code fixes automatically. And today, aside from these, we will also show a few more, which you can find in this. This is a completely new feature, generate code from screenshot. Basically, it creates completely new code and completely new components based on an uploaded design that you give it. And another one, let me just show that one. So as I mentioned, right-click, generate code from screenshot is here, but above it, you'll also find another feature called Compose, generate compose previews. Now, this takes over the repeated task of writing previews for you. Now, Transform UI and generate previews has already been out there, so you might have tried it before, but recently these features, along with all of the other ones, got powered by the agent, which means that the agent is able to execute slightly more complex plans, split them up in individual tasks, and hopefully provide better results. Okay, I think that is it for a bit of the intro. I think we can start with the demo. Okay, cool. So we have one of our Compose samples open here, Jetlagged, which has very distinct theming and styling. You might have seen it before. But today, we want to actually generate a completely new screen for it. Now, this is a very simple mock for a setting screen that doesn't currently exist in this code base. So what I'm going to do is try to generate it from scratch using the generate compose code from screenshot. So I'm going to give it this screenshot and give it to the model to start working on it. So while the model is figuring out what to do, usually how this starts out is the model starts laying out a plan of what to do and how to solve the task you've given it in the best possible way. It starts invoking tools. It starts thinking about which tools to invoke to solve this problem for you. Now, usually it starts out with some of the simpler ones, like reading files or searching for specific resources that it thinks it might reuse. And then goes towards the more complicated ones. It also tries to come up with the best placement for your new code. So it tries to see which files or packages are the best suited ones. And it also tries to reuse things like existing components or best suited resources. Now, here we see that it actually started with some of the simpler ones, like reading files and searching for one of the back arrows resources, but because it didn't find it, it actually realized that it should probably create one. So it went to create this kind of a back arrow resource. It did mess up the color here, which it would probably change on iteration, but honestly, I do not want to wait for that, so I'm just going to give it a bit of a nudge. Thank you for that. So while it's still working, it created like a vector resource that it thought would be the best fit, and then it continued on working with the rest of the code. Now, once the resource was added, it starts continue to look for other things that need to be changed. Now, hopefully, it'll generate the rest of the code soon. Okay. While it's still going, There's, like I mentioned, like there's a few tool calls that tend to happen at the beginning, but then towards the end of the task, okay, great, good timing. Okay, cool. So we see here that there's a mock of a screen that I've given it. Looks fairly similar to what I wanted it. There's tweaks here and there that I wanted to create, but I'll kind of move on to that in the next phase. Once the agent has kind of finished with the initial task of adding the code, it moves on to certain verification steps towards the end. Now, once it's kind of, okay. By the way, I also have auto accept changes enabled here, so I just want to make sure that I don't have to accept it every single time. Once, this is quite slow. Okay, brilliant. So it added some of the changes already, the ones that it thought were needed for completing this task. And towards the end, it needs to verify whether this code is actually being built and whether it's in a good state. So it calls a very unique tool called Analyze Current File. Now, this tool is actually the one looking for any errors that the IDE has already reported. So things like syntax errors or unused imports, deprecated APIs, anything that it can catch beforehand before running a more costly Gradle build. Once it actually calls these tools, it goes into the fixing and iterating mode, and it fixes its potential issues. This tool is, like I said, a lot easier and it's kind of simpler to run before a Gradle tool, and it's a good way to catch issues beforehand. Now, I think I'm pretty happy with this design still. The model might go through several iterations of fixing its issues or trying to align your designs with what you've given it. But for the sake of the demo, I'm quite happy with this, and I think I'm going to move on to the next step. Okay, so another quick thing that I just want to verify is whether like the model was also doing some like basic state handling for these things, like switches and stuff like that. Seems to have done a good job. Okay. I'm happy with this. Let's move on to the next one. So now we have a design in place, and in a lot of the times we have a new requirement from our designer, a new design that comes in midway, and we need to change the UI of our existing feature. Now, if we need to kind of refactor an existing feature and better align it with some of the given mocks, for this specific use case, we actually have another feature to help you out. So I was given this design. It kind of is slightly better aligned with the theming of Jetpack apps. So I'm actually going to give that to the model and see what happens. So to do that, I'm actually going to use the match UI to target image feature. So I'm going to give it the new updated design, and I'm going to send it to the model to see what happens when I request this. So again, most of the times, the model actually tries to lay out a plan, figure out exactly what needs to be done, lays out a plan for you to as well follow the steps of all of the things that it thinks it needs to do, and tries to kind of figure out the notable differences between the existing component and the desired image. As you can see, you can follow some of these steps as well in these kind of pop-ups that keep on changing, and it goes into the tool invocation mode. While it's still doing that, in previous turns we saw the Analyze Current File as one of the verification tools, but we also have a few more that are able to kind of help you out during this kind of landing phase. Let's go. Gotta pay the demo tax at some point. Okay, perfect. So it went in, made some changes to kind of match it better to the design. And I can see that it's actually looking a bit better and more aligned with what I had in the designs. There's some tweaks here and there that I want to do, but again, I think I'm going to actually leave that for a later stage. Great, okay. I think this is what I wanted. Perfect. So once the design has been added and the bigger chunk of the work has been done, the model thinks that now it's kind of ready to show you the results of its work. And for that, it calls this Render Compose Preview tool. Now, this tool actually shows you the results of the agent, and it also does some verifications basically to check if the newly code is actually compiling and whether the preview is successfully rendering. So, and it displays it within the chat tab. the agent tab now. Cool, okay, I'm pretty happy with this as is right now, and I think I'm ready to go on to the next part. So now we have one kind of preview that was generated with the initial part of the code. I hope you can see everything. I don't have a lot of space here to show you. But yeah, it generated the default theme for the entire screen, which is great. But our Compose best practices also say split up your Compose UI into smaller nested components because you're going to get the better reusability and testability, and generally they're going to be able to preview easier. So it did just that. It divided them into kind of more sensible, well-rounded Compose components. But now that I have this, kind of screen-level preview, I want a few more. Now, a few times during this talk, what we said was, basically we said that we want the agent to take over from you the more repetitive tasks and parts of Android development. Now, I love Compose previews. They're, a super useful tool, but writing preview after preview after preview is not really something I'd call, at least, exciting work. So in order to do that, what I can actually use is the generate compose preview AI feature to help me out with this. So one of the things, so it starts out again, similarly laying out a plan for you, trying to invoke specific tools to finish the task successfully, and then it goes on into the actual implementation of the code. Now, one thing that I also want to show is this, one tip is actually, if you're not sure, if you have auto accept changes like I do, and you're not sure at which point the code might have been added, or you just want to see it in isolation, you can also use this kind of diff editor view to ensure that all of this was added properly. Okay, so it added the code, it called a few tools again to verify whether this was successful, and it actually added the preview at the very bottom. Now, this is a very simple component, right? So the preview isn't that difficult to generate, but aside from that, what I wanted to do is to actually generate all of those mock data that I need for the preview so that I don't have to write it on my own. It's a bit of a tedious task if your composable is massive and it takes in a lot of mock data. So this kind of helps you out with this. Aside from that, it also handles things like wrapping it it tries to follow the existing patterns that you have in your code base. So it looks at the appropriate theme, and because I kind of used this show background already, it thought, okay, maybe it's smart to actually follow this pattern and use the same one. So, okay, I'm okay with this. I think that's pretty cool. But the next stage in the development is usually, tweaking your existing UI to better accompany it, to better follow certain designs. Now, for this specific screen, I want to change a ton of things. I want the toolbar to be aligned at the center. I want to change some of the strings. I want to make fonts bigger. I want more spacing. I want a pastel gradient background, etc. So I could do all of this by hand, and obviously I could start, going around the code and chasing where I need to do this. But because I'm able to kind of verbally express what I want, and maybe, I also want to have a bit of fun and see how it looks like, I actually can verbally express it all in this way. So because this is left, I'm going to change it to center. I've kind of pre-written all of these requirements that I just told you, and I'm actually going to use another feature called Transform UI with Gemini, which lets me use this very verbose prompt with a lot of changes, give it to the model, and then see what it comes up with. So I'm going to send all of this to the model. As you can see, you can read through all of these points and all of these smaller tasks that I wanted to build and do for me. And once it kind of, ingests the request that I send it goes into the editing mode. So it goes through some of the tools you've seen before, which is the read files, editing files, and things like that. So I personally, this is one kind of informal tip. Personally, I really like to use Transform UI when I actually need ideas, visual ideas. This means, because I'm not really good at design, by the way, this is one of the phases of the agents. It makes a mistake, and then it goes into the actual iteration mode to try and fix it itself. Because I'm not good at design myself, I kind of sometimes can explain what I want to see, but I can't really make the design for it. So Transform UI is really helpful there because it kind of lets you explain what you want, set into the model, and get some like visual ideas of what your design could look like. Now, while it's still working on these iterations, you can see that it started adding some changes. It started changing some of the typography, and it ran a build which failed. So now it's going to go into the mode of iterating through it and trying to fix it. Seems like it's still trying to fix that. Okay, perfect. Fixed all the changes. It added all the bullet points that I gave it. I'm just going to scroll quickly so that you can verify with me. So settings is now aligned to the center. It increased all the fonts. It changed the strings, and it added like a nice subtle pastel background. I'm pretty happy with this right now. I think it might go through a few verification steps. Okay, cool, finished. That's great. But now that this is kind of done, I also want to acknowledge the fact that not all changes are going to be this easy. It's not like you're always going to be changing just the padding, but you might also actually want to add a new feature. So for this specific part, you can actually use Transform UI as well. So for example, if I wanted to add a chat fab to the screen without having to think about all the resources and all of the implementation, I can just use Transform UI, explain the feature that I want, and let it handle it for me. All you've seen so far kind of repeats itself, but we go into the tool call, it realizes I don't have a chat icon, tries to create one. Let's open it up. I think this is good. It generated the vector drawable, that's fine, but that's fine. I didn't have to do that, but okay. Cool, okay, so it generated the vector resource drawable because it couldn't find an appropriate one in the existing package. It will do that with other resources as well. It will try to reuse strings if it can. If it can't, it will, try to generate them sensibly. Now, it added the vector drawable. It moved on into the second part, which is adding the actual floating action button. And I think it added it in the proper place, which is within the scaffold. So yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with it. It's showing up on the preview, and I think I'm actually going to stop it right here because we are very close to time. Okay, cool. So now we've done this, but what about the quality of the code? Once your UI is completed and successfully implemented, you also want to ensure that the quality of the code is also in a good place. So to do that, you can actually you can use the fix UI check issues feature that is actually implemented through that actually leverages the power of the UI check mode. Oh, wrong one. Sorry about that. So UI check mode, perfect. Thank you. The UI check mode is a service that actually goes through your code and tries to find any potential issues that it might have. So things like potential accessibility issues or issues in other form factors, etc. So right now it's listed out a few that it found with my design. I'm going to try and make this as easy to see. I hope you can see it. But if I go through some of these, I can actually see that some of these are related to some of the insufficient text and color contrast ratio. So I'm not really, okay, I think I know which one it is, but I don't think you can see it. Okay, perfect, here it is. There's a few components that just have insufficient color text ratio. So what I want to actually do is I want to invoke the fix with AI implementation, the feature that's been just recently added, to try and get this fixed by the agent. Now, you can either start this through the UI check mode, or you can actually go into the composable preview and right-click on that, the entry point that we've seen previously. Because that will take a bit more time, I just want to show you a quick way of fixing these potential issues by invoking the agent. Now, it's going through, again, the same kind of a process. It reads your files. It tries to come up with the best proposal to fix it. And it detected that probably this text here should not be using, should be using a better color to make it more suitable. It actually implemented this change, and it's going to rerun to ensure that this fix has actually fixed the issue. The way it does that is by actually rerunning the same service it ran in the first attempt when it detected these issues, which is the visual lint service. Because we are very heavy on, very limited on time, I'm sorry that this has taken a bit longer than I thought, but as you can see, this color here now is a bit more, is darker and slightly more suitable. Okay, cool. So this was a quick way to try and show you a few new features that we just added. We went, in 20 minutes, we went from no code, one simple mock, then we iterated on it, added more features, fixed a few things, and hopefully made this app slightly better.
And because we run out of time, I'm just going to say thank you so much. Please send us as much feedback as you can. Use the thumbs up, thumbs down buttons whenever you see them. And we're going to be around in the conference, and we have office hours a little bit later. So thank you so much for coming to our talk.